So my name is Kali Serkesalo. I work as a field CTO in Efficode. We're a consulting company originally from Finland, but nowadays 10 countries and 650 or so people. So I'm basing most of my presentation on customer cases, our experience with customers and what we are seeing in the field. If you were in my talk yesterday, you would have seen how do you actually build agents and how do you actually start doing something technical. You're now having the precursor of that talk after the talk, so that's a great thing, where I'm going to be talking about organizational change around how do you get here. So our vision in Efficode is future of software development, and the big thing is that we can already see a 5-minute deployment from idea to production, but we call it vibe coding right now. But the reality is that's kind of like what's the future at the moment. It's kind of where could we go if we would figure out all of these different things here? So we have taken this into a thinking that what can we actually get accomplished around here and what actually changes in the working methodology. So you can see that like we have areas where we will not be automating ourselves away. And that's because most of that bottom area is about what is the product idea, what are we actually developing, and what gets coming out of it. So we actually start looking at the thing that we are building. We're not looking at how do we build it. We are thinking about what are we building, what's the goal, who's the customer, what's the ideal customer profile, all of the boring stuff, so to say, like not actually developing something. Most of you probably actually enjoy it. I actually enjoy being here more because you talk to people. You figure out what is the need and you follow how are they using it. And then you start figuring out, did they actually use the feature? And how could we get them to use it? Or is it actually needed? Could we just throw it away? So that's kind of the idea behind thinking around the 5-minute slide. On the other side, we look at it, how could we actually get into the fact that we do 5 minutes? Well, that requires us to have an automatic code generation. It requires us to have some kind of quality assurance, so testing. It requires us to think about security and compliance. And you need this small thing called continuous deployment. So if you're still deploying every quarter, every month, you're not going to be doing AI. I'm going to be honest to you. Like if you can't deploy at least weekly, you're going to have such a bottleneck in your development that you will have a problem with AI code. And that is because the AI code is generated so fast and so quickly that if your feedback loop is a month, a quarter, a year, you're going to have so much code that has been generated in the pipeline, even with the lowest amount of features. One developer can push out, like, when I'm developing hard and I know what I'm doing, even without AI, I could write like 10,000 in a month lines. I don't know what I wrote, but if with AI, you can add 2 zeros behind it. And I don't know still what I wrote. And then I need to debug it. Yeah, it's going to be really hard when you do that for 5 to 10 or 15 or 500 people. So you need to kind of look at your baseline already and start figuring out how do we actually bring AI to here. On the other side, we start needing to think about how do we actually organize. They're also actually the same, but it's kind of different how do we actually work. So we start looking at things like, okay, we have exploring, so this becomes more critical, like how do we actually vision what's coming next? How do we get the customers really excited about the things that we are building? How do we get the customers to think about the fact that like this is what we would be coming in? We make prototypes, we validate prototypes. One customer that is building AI agents at the moment, for example, we're helping them to put AI agents into their product. And they're having the problem that like their sales guys are going with Figma. But if you go with sales guy with a Figma into the customer on an AI feature, how do you validate can you even do it? Because that's just an UI with a prompt box. What's the customer going to say? Like type in his and then nothing works. Because you can't really make a Figma layout for every single prompt that they would make. So you need to make prototypes faster to figure out would this actually work. it needs to have some random data behind it so we could actually see something that the customer can realize, did it actually help on their question? For example, my old boss asked me when we got ChatGPT into use, he was like, if we give it our Jira tickets, can it tell me what tickets are our biggest issue? I was like, no, it can't. It doesn't do math. I can get you the number of what's our biggest incident by going to Jira and doing a JQL search. He was like, oh, you can? I was like, yes, it's statistics. And he was like, oh. So it's again like you have different tools that we want to use and we need to explore what are we using. On the other side, we have engineers. Engineers are the people that we keep hearing Anthropic saying that they're going to get fired this year for 4 years in a row. We are not getting fired because the problem is AI doesn't know what is good. So when it does a solution, it can make the best solution available, but it might not know that we want it to be made with X methodology, for example, due to resiliency, cost, optimizations, history, integrations, guardrails. That's what we are engineering at that point. Like we are actually getting into the point where software engineering is more aligned to the engineering part rather than to the, hey, let's just wipe code this code in history already. Because if you look at what engineers are doing in their real life, the proper engineers, they're doing all kinds of calculations on what's the strength of this beam, for example. What is the maximum load on this? What can we do with this system? Like when do we need to replace it? How many software engineers have you seen having time to do that? We've been just basically being a blacksmith in the factory, but not having any of the factory machines. Now we got the machines, and now we're finally starting to figure out how do we make these in scale. We're not there yet. And then we have the fantastic evolve orchestration. How do we scale these things? How do we make sure that these operate into production? How do we keep making them better? Theoretically, we could probably make these happen, and theoretically, we could probably let AI run the system. But we still have, in the 0 people factories, a person present. Because sometimes there is an error state, and he goes and kicks the robot. If you have ever seen those like automatic factories, there's still people in there. Because they still need to go and solve certain kind of error things that we didn't know. It's the same thing here. We're going to still have operations. And we're going to still have these tooling platforms. So if you have a bad tooling platform, you don't have automated traceability, you don't have possibility of doing any of these pipelines, and you're kind of guessing what's going to happen. And that becomes the thing on an AI native organization. You kind of need to think about how do we actually do the work more effectively. Another thing that we've been considering is that your team size is going to be smaller. So it used to be 1 pizza is enough for the team. We're now thinking that like 3 people is kind of like a maximum that you can really have focused on one product as developers, because otherwise you start losing context about what are we doing. But what prevents us from actually going there is actual fears. Like we have huge fears in the industry. We as an AI consulting company have every now and then people coming in and being like, what if AI takes my job? And I have to actually have a talk about with the person that if you look at statistics, customers, and history at the moment, AI has actually added jobs to the market. As funny as it is, most of the headlines at the moment are about AI layoffs, AI getting rid of people, and so on. But then you start looking at the actual numbers on the job market in USA, for example, and the software engineer jobs are up. They're not up compared to the top of the boom of 2022, but they're up compared to last year, for example. We're still hiring more people. If you look at Finnish statistics, for example, where we keep saying that unemployment is the worst it ever been, our government sucks, and we are the losers in the European Union. I am Finnish, by the way. Actual statistics tell us that all of the students are employed as usual with the same salary as before. So when you graduate 6 months from graduation, you're actually getting hired with the same salary as before. But at the same time, we're saying we have a really bad job market. It's because we changed how we calculate who's unemployed. Surprise. But we are actually having these conversations with people, and then you need to really pull out data and have conversations and create psychological safety for the people. You need to create security and compliance. A lot of people, you can't even imagine how many people are afraid of bringing AI to the workplace and actually starting using it effectively, because they're afraid they're breaking something. They're afraid the AI gets to do something that they don't want it. They're afraid of giving it too secret of a data. They're afraid about what if I do something stupid. So you need to create proper security and compliance rules. Then we have the ownership and control. So it's another really interesting topic, because like many of our customers have a really nice enablement plan. For example, they bring like AI champions together, and the AI champions are ready to go. And then they ask, who actually decides what we're doing with AI? Like, I have a use case from the champions now, and I would like this to be developed into an agent that we use across the organization. Who owns it? Who makes the decision? What data do we need for it? Most organizations can't answer to you. Then we have the other side. Who owns the data governance? Like, our data is bad in Confluence. How many of you have a good data source in Confluence? Yeah. You can also answer SharePoint if you have a good data source. But the documentation we've made is complete garbage most of the time. And now we're like, oh, who owns this? Whose job is it that like this Confluence page that has the developer practices, for example, is documented properly? Who owns this pipeline? We didn't need to define that before, because who would actually read the documentation after it was written? Yeah, and then it's the lack of business case. So even after all of that, if we get to the development phase and we're like ready to go, and we go to the management, there's two kinds of ways of seeing the business case. There is the one where I presented to the customer 9 initiatives that we would do within 12 months, and they would get 3 to 6 times return on investments in the next 12 months from that. They answered to me, why is it 10? Why is it so low? Like, AI is supposed to give 10 to 20x return on investment. Like, can you go back and look for the 10 to 20 return on investment initiatives? I'm like, guys, I'm promising you free money. Like 3 to 6 in a year is really good return on investment in any solid mathematics before. Nope. Hype is so bad in business management that people are expecting ridiculous return on investments on the first initiatives that you do. On the other side, you have an engineer who has a new technology, new concept, and a new way of working, and he's trying to figure out, what am I actually even doing? Like, why are we doing this AI thing here? And he's trying to figure out what is a business case. Because if you're not a business person and you haven't thought about the numbers, and how many of you know, for example, what's your fully loaded employee cost? You can raise your hand if you know, because there should be one finance person. But if you don't, really hard to make a business case. I don't know ours, so I can't raise my hand. So I know I have this kind of a mathematic that I can do when I calculate ours. But I know multitude of my customers, as funny as it is. But that's the kind of things that stop people. On the other side, it's all about getting through the hype cycle. We are kind of getting out of the peak of inflated expectations, and we're dropping to the disillusionment. So this is Gartner's hype cycle, where if you follow this, it kind of follows all of this. So every time a new technology comes out, you have a like technology trigger that like, oh my god, best thing ever. Then it goes all the way to the peak, and everybody's super hyped, and it's like, this is gonna change everything. How many of you remember cloud? Like how it's gonna change everything, and everybody's like gonna be so changed, and like you need to get on this immediately, and it's gonna change everything that you're doing. That was 2014. We're at 2026. How many of you still have some hardware on your own premise and like still trying to figure out why did we put those virtual machines into the cloud? Okay, I got one hand. We're warming up, like we're warming up. All of you, the rest of you are cloud native, so that's fantastic. You can really get some solutions out. But the reality is that it was like 4 years ago when we started seeing SaaS native becoming a thing. Like we started buying SaaS. We started thinking, how would we not have the hardware on our hands? That's the plateau of productivity where we actually see the results. So why the organizations after the panel, if you heard the panel, 90% of the developers produce 80% of the code by AI. Why do we still have problems? Like, aren't we all 80% faster? Well, first of all, it's individual contribution speed. Secondly, coding is 1/3 of your work as a software developer. The other two are talking to people and figuring out what are they even wanting you to do. You sit in meetings, you collaborate with others, and you have quality, you have bugs, incidents, all the other things, and you're trying to juggle those. The current problem with AI in the organizations is trying to get other people to start using tools, so the late adopters. It's also people getting to start doing something. How many of you prompted this morning something? Okay, we're getting there, 10 hands or so. So the big thing is most people don't and haven't put AI into their pipeline. So when you start doing a task, you really need to start trying to put it everywhere. And then you realize this is really stupid. Why do I have AI to do this? And then you start scaling that back and you try it in a multitude of other places. For example, I don't need AI to read my emails, because I read my emails or I throw them into the trash can if I don't read them. Because I'm not going to be reading that anyway, so why would I have AI summarize something that I'm not going to read? On the other side, I need AI to look at my calendar and figure out, am I ready to all of the meetings that I have there? Because I'm not, so then I need to know what do I need to prioritize. The other thing is moving from individual contributors to team level. How do we get scaling of the people? And how do we get them to actually move from one person to the team? So how do we actually get like the returns that we're talking about? How do you actually convert from, hey, this one guy in the corner is using AI, into, hey, we actually moved some of the work away so that our team can focus on other things? And simple, we need experimentation, we need time with the tools, and we need data with the tools. Like we need to have an AI-first culture, and it means failure. It means accepting that we're going to fail. It requires company to understand that people are not going to be producing for a while as much as they did before, because they're going to be testing things. They don't know how to use these. If you're not buying trainings on the people, if you're not buying someone else to sort out the problems, you need to kind of do the failure learning. Because what is fail? It's the first attempt in learning. I thought I would get a laugh out of that, but no. So AI adoption follows the adoption curve. It also follows at the same time innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, laggards. And now that we've gotten most of the technical people into it, we've reached the early adopters. So we also have to remember that it's not just the technical people that are adopting AI in the organization. It's everybody in the organization that has an impact in their work. Few of the most active people in AI in our organization are salespeople, actually. Our sales and account managers are really actively trying to get AI into use on their pipelines, because they really hate Salesforce. You can't imagine how much they hate Salesforce. And they're just like, how could I get out of this tool? And they realize AI is really going to help me. They also don't really know how to use a computer, as I've learned. But then again, I don't really need them to know how to use that if they know how to use a phone and if AI can do the work for them. And I've learned that like, oh my god, they can get really a lot of done, and they can come to me with something that I can actually work on with AI. The other side that I've noticed that has adopted AI really fast is marketing. Mostly because most of the marketing companies got disrupted, and now they're really afraid they're going to lose their jobs, so they're putting AI to everything. The problem is they're putting it on everything, so now you're like, why are our Instagram and LinkedIn pictures AI people? Why are they bad AI people? Like, why couldn't you make this picture properly? We have these stock images, can't we just use, no, that we put AI images into the pictures. Might have happened to us. We might have given a lot of feedback about AI images. They are still coming. But yeah, marketing is the second that is really fast. So what creates those team bottlenecks is system throughput. Like, we are thinking about the individual contribution. Every system that I've seen that measures people is looking at the individual contributor. So then we are like, okay, why isn't this number going up? Well, we are looking at an individual. Then the other side is, if we have a throughput problem across the process, it's gonna get bogging down the whole thing. So if an individual doubles their rate of work, but there is a guy in the back behind waiting on a penetration test from security, for example, or an auditor that needs to approve it, or we send it for a customer for 6 weeks of approvals. Did we get faster by the guy doing 2 times the work? No, because there was other bottlenecks across the rate. So we need to also understand that. On the other side, if you looked at the keynote today, you notice that humans have a specific amount of data that you can process. And that capability is to how much you can review and understand. And that's not going up. That's going to stay flat line. So either we have more time to spend on reviewing and understanding these things and learning about these things, or you get the other side of the things. You just give up and you go to work and you don't care about your work. So you just keep answering to everything TM. That looks good to me. Anybody who has done a code review with people who are checked out, you have seen this probably. They will just say, looks good to me, and press approve. You can do that when it's a really small pull request, but yeah. What do you do to solve that process pipeline? So this is a value stream map. Those of you that have done an MBA have probably heard of at least the term, if not actually what happens. So you start from the idea. So in this customer's case that we did this for, it's an Excel sheet. So they collect the Excel sheet with the customer, what are the requirements the customer is having. Then it goes to product manager, who is like, yeah, looks good to me, and throws it to the developers in tickets. And then the developers start working. That's where we create the value, actually. And then you would think that, okay, hey, it's done. Yeah, no, that's when the actual work starts. We're here. Here we're in production. Everything between here is us making sure that the developer did the correct thing. Also, we did this other thing so that the developer could do this thing. And I can tell you that this is a simplified picture compared to many companies that I work with. And I'm scared of this already. So value creation was these 2 things. And everything else is there to make sure that quality is good. And this is across every single process that you do in your company. Like when you start putting it into, when does it start creating value to the customer or the company? And how many other people get touch this thing? When I did the Jira consulting in history like 12 years ago, my first question was, okay, let's make this sport better. I would ask, what's the first handoff point? And I would put every column was the handoff point. And then at one customer, I got to 17 columns, and I was like, are you kidding me? And they were like, no, this is our process. So then I showed it to them, and I asked, like, are you sure this is the process you want? Can we make it better? We did make it better. It was fun. So I like this picture of where we have found improvements in the SDLC side. Like, you can make 30 to 40% faster development. If you use open code, you can go to open code, or if you use cloud code or any of these new client-based things, you can go to it and tell it, make this slide deck into a web page, and you will have a web page. You can go to it and tell it, give it a data file and tell it, visualize this for me, and you will get visualization. The problem is, what happens after that? Like, how do we actually get it through different points? And how do we speed up the all across projects? And that's the kind of things that you want to tackle, like figuring out the value stream mapping, figuring out your processes, and figuring out the bottlenecks. That's how you actually get started as an organization in AI. On the other side, if you want to think about the humans, you need the training, you need psychological safety, and you really need to start figuring out how do I actually get them to use AI so they learn about it. Most organizations are not even here, to be honest, but I don't have the 1.0 to 0.9 of performance. So we made this framework of AI adoption. I'm going to show you how these numbers come and how the numbers work. But the ideology is that, like, the further right you go, the more the software development turns into factory working. So idea being that, like, could we actually turn from artisan work where we are really happy about the lines of code that we wrote in software into a factory where we could be happy about the product that we deliver to the customer? Because it's not like in Volkswagen factory they're really happy about the screw they bolted in. They're happy about the engine that came out of it. They're proud of the work even, but it's mostly done by machines. It's not a person screwing everything together. But that is the software side. On the business side, it's looking pretty same. So how do we actually measure where do you end up in that? Is these columns. I'm not going to be reading this because you can get the slides by asking me in LinkedIn, for example. Arthurs, for example, can say that, like, he did get the slides actually. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel and get the talk, or you can just take a picture. But the idea is that, like, you have these different things. We have the humans. As someone said nicely, EU AI Act requires humans in the loop. You can't make an AI interview people in Europe. Well, you can, but that's illegal, because you need to do the decisions of human recruitment as an employer by humans. On the other side, in Switzerland, for example, they asked me a really good question when I was talking with their management about AI. Who goes to jail? I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, in Switzerland, the LTD is not legally liable. It's a person, every time. Every process is a person. So it's not an LTD that you sue a person in the LTD. So their first question when they take a new thing into use is, who goes to jail? And as long as it's not the guy doing the decision, he's really happy to write and say that, yes, let's do. But he said that, like, but he's the guy responsible for AI, so he's not going to say yes to everything, because he goes to jail. So that was really eye-opening, because, like, it opens the question, where do we need the human? And the best question to ask is, who goes to jail? Because it simplifies all of the thinking, like, how much can we approve? You can probably convert it somehow to happy things, because we don't do bus factor anymore, so probably we're going to hear, like, some kind of, like, who gets the pay raise? But as someone pointed out, it's always the CEO. Yeah. On the other side, you have these technical things, AI assistants, enterprise architecture. So your enterprise architects in IT are all really mad constantly. Like they keep saying no. Like you had this amazing idea that, hey, I'm going to bring this OpenClaw into use to our system. Like I integrated it to our Teams and SharePoint, and now you can telegram it these messages. And so for some reason, the pesky IT kept saying no. Yeah, it's because of their job, and also on the other side, governance and risks. There is quite a lot of risks if you can just send a message to a text message and you get answers about your corporate data. Yeah, but those guys are kind of pesky. They require like integrations and APIs, and they think about like how do we actually orchestrate these things, and like how would we learn about these systems? Like how do we actually keep improving these systems over time? Like, isn't it enough that it worked one time in my laptop? Why do we need to like have an improvement pipeline for it? Yeah. On the other side, you have people and culture. So we have like these people things that are related. Like how do we actually get AI experiments and training into use at the assistant? Like how do I as an individual contributor get better? Then we have ambassadorship. So when we start moving towards agents and teams, the question becomes how do we get all of these different people to talk about the things that they found, making things together. If you have been in more technical talks, how do we get them to, for example, inner source their skills? So I wrote a skill that allows me to go into any GitHub, give it the credentials, and tell it, do a well-architected review for me. Get a report out of it. How good are these guys at using GitHub? I shared it to all of the employees in our company, but I could also just have that and sell those cases to customers and just keep billing the 7.5 hours every day without actually doing any work. But not my job, so I like to share things. And so on. Like you have all these people problems that we need to solve. And then on the business side, how do we actually reduce the manual work? How do we measure any of this? Like everybody wants some kind of return on investment number. How do we actually get there? Well, system output is not measured by hours saved. Like if you are building AI, thinking how do we save more money, you're building the wrong thing. Most of us, when we do business cases, we think about how do we increase the revenue, how do we make the cake bigger. So again, looking at the governmental side, for example, most of the time we're not making decisions how do we cut more social security numbers, except if you're in Finland, we cut from everything. But we are looking at how do we actually increase the size of the cake. That's why we keep talking about how do we make the GDP go up in every country. Because the GDP is easy number. It's not the actual number, but it's an easy number for a politician to follow. Are we actually increasing the size of the cake that we have? Because if you have 40 people coming for a party and you have a cake for 10, making the pieces smaller is not going to be enough for 40 people. You need to start figuring out how do you get another cake. The core of an organization in history, we have had where, how, who, what, and then we have the whole why. And usually we're really bad at why. Like how many of you know what is your company's purpose and the culture and the thinking that why are we doing this work even? Again, I didn't get any, people are taking pictures, so I calculate all of those. Then you have what, and this is again like, if I ask the CEO, do we have a clear strategy? I always get, yes, it's the best strategy. So that's why when we do an AI maturity survey, for example, to our customers, we ask all the way to the developer. It's always really fun when the CTO is like, we have the best AI strategy, and you get the software developer answering, we don't have any AI strategy. And you're like, okay, how did this go? And then you get to somewhere around VP level, and they're like, yeah, we don't actually know what the strategy is, because nobody actually told them about it. Because we are very easily thinking that we have communicated something, even if we haven't, as an organization. Then we had the roles and responsibilities, processes and workflows, and tools and infrastructure. The nice thing is, in history, we've been changing maybe maximum of 2 boxes at the same time. So when we did an ERP and cloud transformation, we thought where and how. We never really thought who or what. Because when we went to cloud, you probably noticed that some people's job just changed to be cloud engineer. And then you ask what changed, and they were like, I got a higher salary. I did some certificates. But it didn't really affect their responsibility. They were still responsible of keeping the service up and running as cheaply as possible. When we did the agile transformation, we tried to not touch the tools and infrastructure. We touched the who and how do they work. We tried to make it so that they would know who's responsible and how are they working. But now with AI, it's kind of touching everything. So we have new tools. You probably have about 20 different AI tools available in your company. You have new processes and workflows, like you're supposed to use AI this way or that way. You have new responsibilities. All of a sudden, you are responsible for something that you didn't even know existed. And the strategy is now AI first, and you're like, what does that even mean? How do I make these decisions so we're AI first? So we're kind of affecting the whole organization's fundamentals at the same time. So that's why it's really hard. So if you think about it from a benchmarking point of view of how much money your company should be spending, you end up in a situation where ERP cost was about 1 to 3% of your annual revenue. So you spend 1 to 3% of your revenue in ERP transformation programs. And the largest cost was the implementation services there, which was about 100 to 200% of the annual software fees. And these were usually 3-year projects. The cloud projects were usually about 2 to 3 years of payback. And at the same time, like you're thinking, they want to change everything here, but how many of you have seen 100 to 200% of investment on services around the new tools that you were brought in, on professional services or helping you or changing anything? Because usually what we see is they just tell you, hey, here's a new tool, you're going to use it. We found a YouTube video for you. So the magnitude of an AI investment, if you look at it as a whole organization, is massive. But we're kind of trying to skirt by not spending money on it, and then we keep saying that where is the AI return on investment? Why are we not better at AI? Yeah. I have a bunch of more slides, so if you ask the slides, you will see a lot more. But I'm also at the time based on my lovely timekeeper there. So I went way slower than I expected. And now it's open for questions, and I might have answers in the slides. And as I said, I did film, hopefully with audio, yesterday's presentation, where I actually told about the technical side. This was kind of fluffy, but the idea was you need this kind of thinking to actually get somewhere with AI. If you want to see how to build AI, I made a talk yesterday. And the slides and the thing is coming up to the pictures. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Hopefully you learned, and now to Slido, I guess. Questions, yeah. You don't need to use Slido because we have a microphone.
Are there any questions?
Oh.
So does AI first mean that you go to ChatGPT first and only then ask people?
I actually do that nowadays. Just to see how it answers. I don't use it like some managers that I have met, where they go to AI and then they come to me and complain, why do I give a different number? I use it more to give a breakdown so a person can actually answer me without me going and asking something like, can we change this process? And then they're like, what process? How do you think where it affects? If I go to AI and I ask, I want to change this process, it usually makes you a list of things that will be affected. You can also ask it, I'm changing this process, what things will be impacted? And you can get this list and you can go to a person and be like, okay, I want to change this, how could we tackle this? How much time is it going to take? So I can make it more, how to say, human, the conversations that I'm having. Because if I just go and try to do things without asking AI, I do what I did for my colleague, and I sent them a ticket called Ansibles. That was everything that read in the ticket, and I say, go. He was not happy. It's been 7 years, and he still tells me about it.
I have one observation and one question.
Yeah.
First observation, from my perspective, from the developer point of view, in most cases, you don't you don't receive new tools. You ask for them.
So that depends on the organization. if your organization is immature in AI, you ask for them and really have to request, and they keep saying no. And then I've seen those AI-first organizations where they come in and tell you, you're now using this.
It's usually fintech companies.
Yeah. So the problem is at that point that they keep telling you a different tool every week.
And the question is, you have said that in the USA there is a growing request for software developers. But in the last week I have seen that information that Microsoft have hired about 80,000 people, I think. How do you can you comment this?
So Microsoft, if you look at who got reduced in Microsoft, this is based on at least the Finland branch, Denmark branch, and few others. Most of the people that vanished from the organization were sales. So if you read, for example, what the CEO said, the answer was that they reduced account managers. And
it was exactly about software development.
Okay. So I don't know what you're referring to, because like the other side is that like if we look at Anthropic, they have hired more than ever. If we look at OpenAI, hired more than ever software developers. If we look at Amazon, hired more than ever.
The information was from BBC.
Yeah. So I would need the source so I could read it, because like challenge is that like I had a customer last week where we talked about their 80 developer organization. They have 9 teams and they're moving to 11. So they're going to add about 20 developers.
So you mentioned that applying ERP system in an organization, the organizations would expect to pay like 1 to 3% of their revenue for those projects, and the AI projects would probably be even more. Well, I've been consulting companies in both of those fields for a while, and there's a very important differentiation here, that ERP systems, that's like around 50 to 80% of those projects go sour. They are like really organizational stress. Many people leave because there are problems, they go over the budget. Whereas the AI projects can actually be done on a more gradual level, where you actually get the first benefits quite quickly, and there is less organizational stress. Or what is your experience?
So according to research, 98% of AI projects fail. So at that point, your ERP projects would be successful compared to that. Reality is that yes, you can do it more gradually. It's not direct mathematics, but the thing is that is anybody investing 1 to 3% of their revenue to this kind of a change? Like, I haven't seen that. I have customers that are fighting with me about cloud code licenses, and I'm like, this is $20 per person, or $50 or $200 per developer, and that's not 1% of even the developer's salary at that point. They're like fighting about really small costs at this point. Like, they're not even talking about the actual cost of things. They're talking about like micro optimizations right now. So it's kind of trying to give scale on the challenge that we're having instead of like being a direct number. Why ERP costs? Because ERP is one of the systems that everybody can relate to, because every one of us has seen an ERP project and knows, as you said, we all have traumas, and we have all had that trauma of being in an ERP project, no matter where you are in the organization. And the problem is, if ERP is that bad, how bad is badly done AI project going to be? Because we're going to do a lot of bad AI projects also, hopefully not as much as ERP.
Yes, and then there are 2 Slido questions. There is one about an annotation. There was something said about non-live demonstrations and where can it be seen?
Yeah, I did that yesterday. I will be posting it to my YouTube at least, and there is also recording of my laptop screen, so it should be coming into the DevOps, the AI Summit YouTube channel also of Data Miner, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and then I think we can quickly finish the last one question. What do you think about training company models instead of using generalistic ones?
So I have now seen that we've stopped doing general trainings right now, and we do more of coaching. So we send an engineer, software, like a consultant from our side usually, to a customer team, and we do coaching sessions. So we have like 2 or 3 days a week where we sit with the team, and they can ask any questions about AI. And we work with them on thinking about how would you use AI. So it's more of this Scrum Master or comparable soft role now when we do like developer side of things. On the on the organization level, it gets really difficult because like, how do you get on a training company model so that like, how do we actually tackle every single field? Because we also can't, like, I have another talk, but it's not here, where I talk about innovation. And the big thing about innovation is that you have to ask multitude of different areas around. So you have to get a person from sales, marketing, finance, and development together, and then they complain to each other, and they come up with an innovation. That's the 1980s starting research around innovation processes. Most of you have probably never seen it live, because innovation process is kind of like, we keep forgetting that we're supposed to run those things. But if you have seen one working, it's usually cross-collaboration across borders, because different people have different views on process, and it enables you to actually solve a new way of thing when there is different people tackling a problem. This is why, for example, diversity was such a big thing for a long period, because when you have diverse opinions, you find new ways of approaching things and you create innovation.
Okay, thank you. So, the last one question?
Yeah.
Yes, it's about, it's regarding this question.
Yeah.
So, have you have any courses about training local LLMs? Because our company in the near future is thinking to make one LLM to process financial data.
So, we're not a data company, to be honest, so I wouldn't buy us to train your model, but we're happy to, of course, help and explain. But at the same time, I would look for some of those companies have actually done data projects for over years, because training a model is not the hard part in models. It's getting the data clean and pre-filtered and so on. So you can basically get a YouTube tutorial how to make a model in 15 minutes. You can go to PewDiePie's channel. If you don't know who's PewDiePie, you'll be happy. If you know, you understand why it's such a joke. And he has a training video for you about how to make a model training. But then he's trying to explain to you that making the data for it took him like a year. Because making a good training data is complex.
Data is not the problem.
Yeah, so depends on what kind of model you also, because if it's financial data, you probably want a statistics model instead of LLM. So then looking at...
It's not statistics, it's fraud prevention and other such stuff.
So that's an anomaly detection side if you go to fraud detection. So there is an anomaly detection modeling, and you can look at, for example, how AWS has solved it, because they have a few case studies around it.
Okay, thank you so much for everybody for attending, and thank you for the speech.